We know they're out there. And we know we need to find them. We target them for different reasons. But when the line tightens, we all feel the same. We feel alive. The water moves around us and the world feels far away. We are here. We are fishing. It is a search, not just for fish, but for all things most important. For family and friends, for tradition and tranquility, for conservation and competition. All of us find what we are looking for. Yet we continue searching. We cast, and as the lure soars, our hopes soar with it. This will be the one. They tell us insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting different results. But we are not insane. The fish are still out there, and we are fishermen. We have been since we were young, and will be until we can do no more. And then, when the ice begins to freeze within us, we will
G'day everyone, welcome. Another Friday night is held upon us. It takes us all week to put this show together, and man, it comes through really quick. And this is the 4th edition of ABT Lockdown Live. I hope wherever you are in Australia or in the world, you're joining us here and having a good time, talking about great times past, present and maybe future for ABT and AFC. My name's Steve Morgan. I'm your host. It all happens from the ABT secret bunker here in Coorparoo in southeast Queensland, although we talk via the internet to people all over Australia and in this episode, all over the world. We have to have a bit of a moment's silence though, not because it's Anzac Day tomorrow, because we're going to do that tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock on our driveways, but because this is what should have been happening this weekend. That's it, the Megabass round of the Sufix BASS Pro Series. Someone would have taken this check away. Might have been Mike Nelson. Maybe it wouldn't have been Mike Nelson. We got Mike on the show tonight to talk about how he would have tried to make it a three-peat for this week. The round's sponsored by Megabass. They're a new ABT sponsor for this year on the bass side. We have absolutely kick-ass Megabass prize packs that we give away in the non-boater section. They're full of the Siglets, which were the bait that won the only Bass Pro Series this year. We've got the tiny Siglets, the grand Siglets, the regular Siglets. We've got some Vibration X's, the Dog X's, Dog X Juniors, Griffins, and the swim jigs, the Vos. Great Megabass pack there, worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. A non-boater would have taken that away at some stage of the week this weekend. About $3,000 would have been on that winner's check. So we thought, what better thing to do than to theme this week's show as the Sufix Megabass round of the Sufix Brim Series on the Clarence River. Would have been held over Anzac Day, like always. We would have had the minute silence down at the start as the sun's coming up so we can remember the fallen. And it's an interesting year for Anzac Day because we're in our own battle at the moment globally with this invisible enemy that Australia is doing well about. We're going to talk to Carl Jocenson about that on the show a little bit later on. Let's introduce some of the guests for tonight. We're going to be talking to Mike Nelson, who was the two-time winner of that Clarence River event. Must be the most pissed off guy in Australia that it's not on. But we're going to talk to also Grafton local Anthony Duff. Now, Anthony had the camera in his hand when you saw some of the greatest ever pictures taken at ABT of the Joey Urquhart, Brian Everingham battle at a grand final on the Richmond a few years ago. But he's a local on the Clarence. He's going to give us some of his insight. We've got Glen Casey from Bassman Spinnerbaits. Now, their home is up in the Northern Rivers. Bassman have been the naming sponsor for that event for a few years. So we talked to Glen Casey about his favourite spinnerbait for the area and how his business is going because he is exporting to the USA now. A shout out. We had a prize of these Jollop Lures fizzes last week. A guy called Dylan Ty won them. Dylan, if you're online, you didn't get us your details. If I don't hear from you this week, Dylan, I'm going to give them away again next week, those Jollop fizzes. Dylan Ty, if you know him, send him a message. Tell him to get in touch with his address details. We'll get him his prize. Plenty of prizes on tonight as well. One of them is going to be some merchandise that's going to go to the Show Us Your Boat segment. We've had plenty of guys send in their videos of their boats and they're going to run over the next few weeks. They win some Mercury merchandise, but the winner at the end, which will be subjectively judged by Nicole at the other end of this stream, it'll win a great Mercury outboard cover for your Mercury that you got on the back of your boat. The prizes we got tonight, the first one that we like running every week, it's the Tell Us Where You're From prize. And you can put your comment on the screen here, and you probably can't see it. This isn't a coronavirus graph here. This is a graph of the viewers as they're logging on. On the side here, there's a chat window we can see, and you have a chat function on this. So let us know where you're from. We can see what your name is. Tell us where you are, and I tell you what, we will send you this pack. Tonight, because it's a Carl Jocenson pack, we will send you a Carl Jocenson jersey in your size, because I've got all the sizes here. And also, because he was on AFC, we've got a whole set of, well, not the whole set, we've got 5 AFC DVDs for you. Because AFC DVDs make the lockdowns fly on by. We've got some other great prizes that we're going to be giving away. Later on, I'll tell you the mechanic, but we've got some great, some Rapala lures to give away here. Some of the BX cranks. We have some VMC hooks. We have some Rapala pliers, we have some Sufix braid, some VMC stickers. That's going to be given away later on in the show. And also, of course, we've got our Suck Up to Nicole prize. Nicole is the one who does a lot of the work on the back end of the show. She isn't at the front end. I just jump in at the end and I grab all of the glory. So any Suck Up to Nicole comments, whack them in the bar there and she will pick out someone that sucks up the best and says what a great job she did. That consists of an ABT jersey and some Costa merchandise, stickers, stubby coolers, microfiber cloths. We have got all the prizes, and just a little bit of a teaser. Next week, we're going to give this away. This is an AFC jersey, Series 4, signed by the entire cast and crew of AFC. It's Carl Jocenson's last series of AFC that he's fished. It's got Scotty Towner, Timmy Morgan, Dizzy Borg, Hank Watson, Adam Reuter, all the presenters, and then it's got all the crew on the bottom too, so it's something you can't get. We're going to give that away next week. Keep an eye out how you can share the word for ABT Lockdown Live, and you can win a kick-ass jersey. I guarantee this is one of the only ones of these suckers in existence. So that's going to be awesome to give away during the week. But remember, the first one, let us know where you're from, whack it in that sidebar there, and I can see plenty of people entering that already. So you are on board. We're going to drop to an ad from the naming sponsor of the Brim Tour, Costa, and then we're going to come back with the first segment with Carl Jocenson. We've got 3 segments with Carl tonight, and a little sneaky one at the end that you're going to want to watch. So let's drop to an ad from Costa, and then you're going to hear from Australia's best bass fishing export, Carl Jocenson.
If you're Will Flack, you don't just go fishing. You get up at 4 a.m., get your motor going. Get this motor going. Sun's up, shades up. Pick it, tie it, stretch it, haul it. Dang it. Let's try this school. Nope. Best restaurant ever. You were gonna be back by 3. 3-ish? 6-ish. Bonefish, 2 o'clock. Strip, strip, strip. Hit it, kiss it. That's it. Okay, your turn. And now it's a fishing trip. For those who need water to breathe. Costa sunglasses.
Okay, Lockdown Live is all about, well, it has been all about great Australian anglers in Australia, but we know that you're all here tonight to look at this draw card. We have Carl Jocenson here live from his lockdown mansion over there in the USA, mate. Carl, looks like you have really set yourself up at home in this joint, mate, and what better place to be in the world's biggest coronavirus pandemic hotspot.
Yeah, it's definitely a good spot to be. We're very, very lucky to have it, and it's not a mansion, but it's a mansion in a shed crossed. it's both our dream place, and just couldn't be more grateful to be here right now in this time. We've got everything that we could possibly want right here, and it's it's made things a lot easier. It could have been a lot worse with the situations we've been in the past.
Yeah, mate, look, you probably kept an eye on the figures. You'll see that Australia is getting an A+ for containing this thing, and I think it's a little bit of good management. The government's done all right over here, but it's also good luck. Like, we live fairly distant apart from each other in Australia. We all sort of hate each other anyway, so we've always been socially distant anyway. So do you look at, and the news we see from America is, like, we look at New York where there's like 20,000 people dead and 250,000 people have been tested positive there. Where do you sit on that scale between Australia and New York, where you're living at the moment?
Yeah, in Tennessee it's pretty country, So we're in the south here. It's nowhere near as bad, and our local place here is super country, and everyone's very cautious. So everyone's doing the spacing. You can't go down an aisle. You can only be the one person down the aisle. And even in this small town, they're still taking it super serious. But it's good to be in the south and be in a rural type area with this sort of stuff going down. But everything that we've seen in the past, like the news that gets conveyed in Australia is totally different to what is getting conveyed here. It's the same with the president stuff. When we went back to Australia, everyone was thought Hillary was going to win, and there's no way Donald Trump. But we knew 100% that he would win, and it was like a no-brainer. But when we flew home, everyone thought it was like a joke, and we were like, oh no, she's got no chance. So that's kind of happens a lot. I see the media over there, and I'm like, that's not really happening over here. It's a lot calmer than what you think. But, obviously there's more people. You don't want to be in those big cities with just millions and millions of people crammed into it. But, everything's pretty positive over here right now. That from businesses to what everyone's saying, they're being smart about it, and they're working through it and have a pretty positive outlook.
That's good, mate. One of the things that we've done, and all the Fishing Monthly and ABT team at the moment, we're all working from home, which is something they've instructed us to do over here as early as possible. One of the artifacts of that is I've been able to go through some old DVDs that my mum used to film at the old events, and we dug out some really cool footage from the 2001 Bass Electric Grand Final. Now, I've sent you this footage to have a bit of a look at it, and it's some absolute gold in there. I actually didn't even know that footage existed until I started going through these piles of old DVDs that the old man had put from tapes onto DVDs. I go, this stuff's gold. Now, a couple of clips we're going to show now. We're going to drop to a clip now, and I'm going to run the clip, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Okay, here we have Chris with a story at Maroon Dam.
Here's Carl Jocenson's sleeping bag from last night.
Oh dear. Never mind. Where do we get Carl on? Excuse me, I just turned it on. Here's Carl. Now, what's the story about your sleeping bag, Carl?
The esky leaked, I think.
The esky leaked?
We had a very exciting dream. Back in my days, we called it the bladder. My blood will leak.
So, Carl, there you go. There's the footage. That's the famous footage of Carl coming out with the physical evidence that you wet the bed at a tournament, mate. What's going? Tell me the real story.
Yeah, there's definitely a real story, and you can't ever talk to Chris. You can't ever ask him anything. He's a known liar. That just like brings back so many awesome memories. I love seeing it. Like nothing has changed. Like Chris just got bigger and he can beat you up now. That's the only difference. But yeah, just awesome. Like as soon as I saw that, I know the tent that we were in, where we were at Maroon Dam. You know, that whole grand final, seeing the boats, like that's where it all started. But you know, any opportunity Chris or me could get to give each other hell, and he definitely got me one there.
Look, there's some other footage that we're rolling in the background now, and actually, no, we'll cut to it now, and we'll roll the footage of you and Chris on the bankside talking about your John Schofield fly. So let's have a look at that now.
You got the secret lure, Carl?
That's secret fly. It's going to win the boat.
Is there a big bass this weekend, Carl?
There's no prize for it, but you get a badge.
Okay.
I think, wouldn't mind it still.
So, Carl, that the fly was so big in the old days. Like all of the young guys now probably don't understand how big fly fishing was and how much of an absolute legend John Schofield was. And in the rest of that footage, you can see it on our YouTube channel. If you go to the ABT YouTube channel, the whole lot of footage is there. How good is it that the guys are just pushing the boats out, going about 10 feet, dropping an anchor and starting to fly fish off the front at Point Right Maroon there? Like back in the day, it was you hardly saw anyone not throwing a fly in those days.
Yeah, no, that was definitely the deal, and that's where I got super lucky to meet John. You know, in those early days, the Crestbrook Grand Final was the way that I actually got to meet John, and I was in the Kabbalah and Crestbrook fishing clubs, and something happened, and John reached out to someone that I knew, the David Libke, who was the main guy of the Crow's Nest Fishing Club, and he actually put me in touch with John. And we sort of talked because I lived at Crestbrook like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every day of my life from when I was 10. And then I was about 15, I think. And I got to actually fish with John. And then I sort of showed stuff at Crestbrook and he showed me how to fly fish and he just whacked them. And I'd never fly fished Crestbrook before. And that's how it all started. And then I was hooked. So I got very lucky to meet John in the early days and get the greatest advice and have a mentor like John to teach me all of that. And then you can see in that footage, it's just amazing. Like I've got that fly. I still have that fly box and those flies tied. Like I still keep a lot of it. And just looking back, you see me like Sue asked me what big bass was worth, and I didn't know if it was worth any money, but I knew you got a badge, so I was like, you get a badge for big bass, you know. And I was pumped. That was the big key to get that badge. But yeah, just that fly fishing, it's crazy to see that it has kind of tapered off and that it hasn't taken back off, or even I'm surprised it hasn't taken off over here, because smallmouth, they throw flies over here on spin rods a lot, like on a little jig head. And that deep fly just hasn't really gotten, but just everything just comes in big cycles, and I'm sure it'll come back around and go good. But back then, like John was just unstoppable with that fly rod.
Oh yeah, look, he was our initial highest ever money winner on the bass side of things, until some young protege of his kicked him off the table. And you'll be still proud to know that you're still like solidly in front of the next one. I think it might even be Matty Mott or someone who's the next one down now. But the rate he's winning money, mate, your neckbeard will be white before he overtakes you, mate. It's a good record you've got.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like to look and see that, pretty proud of it all. But like looking back at it, I remember I missed one ABT event because of an AFC event or something like that. But I was still fishing. But I think from the day I started fishing and I started doing tournaments, from then, which I was 15, I fished that first electric, to when I left here, when I was 26 years old, I never missed a single event. Like, so like people can say, look at it and say, wow, you know, you got money, but like that, it was a lot of pretty dedicated, never missed one. And just, I live for it, you know,
yeah.
Still do.
What birthday was it when you won that big blue trophy in the background?
That was my 35th. So
So
30.
you're an overnight success in 20 years.
Yeah, it just took 20 years, and I was good to go.
That's awesome, mate. Look, that's the start of our show wrapped up there. We're going to come back to you a little bit later in the show. We're going to talk about AFC and some of the nicknames that you got through the years.
Nice.
Well, there you go. How cool is it to have an Australian export like Carl winning on the big stage over there, but still being humble enough and remembering his roots. And I remember when I sent him that footage, it was great for him to look back 20 years ago to see where they all started from. And how small was Chris George? He had biceps like this. You know, nowadays, he was the Commonwealth welterweight boxing champion for a while. So the boys have really gone their own way and done really well. There was a couple of questions in the comments there about, is that footage online and available? Yes, it is. All of that maroon stuff, if it's not live now, we're going to make it live at the end of this show so that you can watch and see all the guys. There's Johnny Schofields and Timmy Morgans and Paul Dolans, all the old guys that fished in the early days, the Harry Watsons of the world. They are all there, and they are all looking 20 years younger because dead set, that's how young they are. That is all available, and every week we release that old footage on the ABT site. We're going to talk to Carl a little bit later about AFC, and with the AFC stuff, every episode he talks about, that episode is going to go live on your live on the ABT YouTube channel, exactly where you're watching this after the show. So we got you covered for during the week because there is plenty of stuff historical for you to watch. Remember, if you haven't told us where you're from yet, tell us where we're from in the comments on the side here. We have that great Carl Jocenson jersey and AFC DVD pack for you, and we'll even give you the shirt in the right size. At the end of the show, we'll send the call out. You got to tell us what your address, etc. is. So that's one of them. The second one I want to talk about is the Rapala comp. So we've got some Rapala crankbaits here, some of the BX crankbaits, little rip and wrap. I've got some VMC hooks, and I've got some Sufix line. And I've also got some Rapala pliers, some stickers, etc. I want you to tell us in the comments what your favourite model Rapala lure is. Doesn't matter if it's a 20-year-old fat wrap or something you can buy nowadays. Drop your favourite Rapala lure name in there, and we will draw someone out at the end to win that Rapala pack. Just a couple of our prizes packs that we have going tonight. I think that's about it. Let's drop to an ad from Okuma. We're going to come back with Anthony Duff to talk us through some of the craziest photos we've ever seen in AFC.
Yes, as soon as that landed, it was on.
All right, we've got with us this evening Anthony Duff. Duffman, you're famous for a few things in ABT, but what I think you are most famous for is one of the best ever photos that I've seen in 20 years of running tournaments, and that was covering the Richmond Bass Pro Grand Final a couple of years ago. That event where it was a showdown between Joey Urquhart and Brian Everingham, and that stake was like a $60,000 Bass Cat boat motor trailer package. Mate, you were there with the camera in your hand. Take us through that, shooting that way in, and more particularly that event. You did some great work that weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, g'day, Steve. Yeah, that was a big eye-opener for me. I sort of never got into the bass. I was sort of always doing brim, so jump across and see how everyone's doing it. And then also Simon Goldsmith is like behind the scenes, the setups, and then how he's interviewing on water from boat to boat, and just sort of, yeah, it was a real good insight that way. And yeah, to get to take photos, it was great. There's a lot of, they're scattered pretty well because that Richmond system, they got the they can go downriver, down Woodburn, or they can go right up to Casino Way or Lismore. So they were spread out pretty well. So did a bit of travelling to find the boys. The majority, like Brian and Joey, they sort of fished. They were up the Richmond arm, towards Casino. So got a lot of good shots of well, especially Joey, like on that last day, because him and Brian, they were pretty close together. So concentrated on those boys, and I think it was Chris Exon, he was a bit further up. And just rattling off photos and seeing them hook fish too, which was really good. I didn't get to see Joey do his Iconelli impression. That was on the first day. That big bass that he got out of that snag.
Yeah, well, we're going to run that at the end of this segment anyway, because that clip's worth running at least once every 3 months. We call it Joey going Ike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was crazy. But the weigh-in come around, and we knew it was going to be close. And it just happened to be on that last day for that weigh-in with everybody. No, not that many people knew. The main lens I was using decided to play up, and I only had a short focus range, so I had to sort of really do my best to sort of get photos to work with it. And so they're coming on, going on the stage, and you can see the boys with the pressure. You've probably seen a couple of photos that got their hands on their head, and the nerves are really getting them. Like it's a big prize, that bass cat, and see Brian's weighed, he's in, and then Joey's come up to weigh his last bag, and I'm just standing next to the live stream camera that you got set up, and just as that scales it, Simon put that bag on there, and I was ready. I knew, just want to get that emotion. That was the thing I really wanted. Yeah. And they just dropped the weight down, and it went above it, and like Joey's still like, yes, I got it, and then just nicked down about 30 grams or something below what Brian had, below that 3 kilos, and you just you'll see it on the photos. It just said it all, and that's probably the most emotionally charged weigh-in I've ever seen or been part of, because it's just because like Joe's a good bloke, Ryan as well, and just to see him heartbroken as well.
And we've got some photos in the background here playing now. You've got some photos of Joey Urquhart, which 100% explain what it's like to miss out by 20 or 30 grams on winning $50,000, and they're playing in the background here with Joey. I reckon he had a tear or two in his eye.
Oh, yeah, quite a few actually. I didn't have any Kleenex on me. I wasn't going to give him any lens wipes either.
No,
because I needed those to get to wipe the tears off my lens, so I could get the pictures of him. He's old man. He raced with his old fella. It was heartbroken because it's just so close, but just so far away. It's like nobody remembers second, unfortunately, but that everybody remembers who comes second. Yeah, because of how that event was. Yeah,
that's true. Now this weekend we were supposed to be. We would have just had a briefing for the Megabass Clarence round of the Sufix BASS Pro Series, and mate, you're not very far away from the event centre here, aren't you? You live in Grafton, which is right near the ramp there. It would have been a 50 boat plus comp, and how's the river? Was it fishing before the shutdown? You're a member of the club down there as well. Yeah. How was the river fishing? Would it have been a good event this year?
It's starting to improve. Like we had a bit of a flood there just after Christmas. We finally got all that rain that we needed, and gave it a good flush out. It rose about 2 to 3 metres. Yeah. And the bass fishing was really tough.
Really?
It was really hard, but the bream fishing was just through the roof. Like great catches down the front, down around the Amber, as you'd expect, with that dirty water pushing down the front. A lot of the favourite spots like Coldstream, they just shut down. They were dead. All that runoff that comes off the flats around Tucabia and all those areas, just nothing was happening there. A few of the boys in our club were going up for a sticky beacon. Just, so Rick Duff, who came second last year, he went up for a look and he come back down and he said it was like 30, 40 minutes later and he still had his boat trails on the river. Wow. That's how putrid it was,
So
and upriver was pretty much the same. So it took a while to pick up, but now it's just starting to come good and we can't do anything about it.
Well, think of how good it's going to be when you are allowed to go out on your first club outing come the end of COVID-19. The bass are going to be fantastic. And just give the listeners a bit of a rundown on how the Clarence works. Like those bass, when it floods in spring and summer, those juvenile bass and the bass take the opportunity to go way up the river. And then when it floods in autumn, they take the opportunity to come all the way back down. So a good flood can mean ridiculous numbers of bass in certain parts of the river, can't it?
Oh, exactly right. There's a few key spots where you'll get big schools and you get just a bass to throw, and there's sort of key areas upriver as well with the same sort of setup. It's funny, like I was just thinking there earlier about all the big bass, all the big ones seem to come on surface, so they don't shy away with that colder weather for that good surface strike, especially the big fellas, which is really good. Then on the other hand, you got the deep jig bite, which Mike Nelson went and basically opened all the eyes of all us grafter knights on what jigs are all about, and it just revolutionised how we fish this river as well. So their bass numbers, they can be. That's the problem. It's such a big river, you can catch them within 100 kilometres.
Yes, that's
one
right.
boat and the other boat will be 100 kilometres away. So it's a big system to really try and nut it out if you really want to try and put the hard yards in.
It's been a revelation for us coming from lakes, because lakes are a very stable system. There's no tides. Well, there are tides. They just take a few years to go up and down. Yeah. But getting onto the rivers, it's really let a whole different cohort of fishermen shine. And the guy that wins Angler of the Year now is normally the one who can do well in rivers and lakes. And you have to have diverse skills nowadays to do it. So guys, like you've got a really good cohort of anglers down there, like yourself and Goffy and some of those guys that can run that river. They can run it real well, but often they don't do as well as you think they will when the tournament comes around.
That's right. Yeah.
Why is that? Can sometimes you just know too many spots in a river?
Oh, I think that's exactly it. You can do your own head in, and those favourite spots, and you go, I'll go and hit that. And if they don't work, well, then you sort of really start to have mind games with yourself. I double donut last year. Yeah. I had a couple of key spots that I wanted, ran down there, and there's already boats on it, and I was a shot duck. I sort of went, right, where do I go? And I sort of didn't want to go where I didn't pre-fish, because I knew I had a couple of mates who were fishing up, especially up the Gold Stream, and they put all the work in. I didn't want to go up there and sort of interrupt their game plan. I thought, no, I'll just work what I can, and I wasn't too worried. That's just the way it is. But
that's it. When it's your time, it's your time, mate. Look, I know. I can see in the background there you've got yourself one of the original South African X16s that Mike Connolly brought in maybe 10 to 15 years ago, and you've got a beautiful brand new Mercury 115 Pro XS on the back. Just give us a little bit of a rundown on the performance you get out of that little pocket rocket. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this boat used to be your brother's boat. This used to be Timmy's. Yep. Went to Western Australia and I got it back over, and it had a 90 Emmy on it, and then ended up putting an Opti 115 on it, and then upgraded when the 4-strokes come out. And the top end range was still exactly the same, with a light load and like a bit of a run out tide. I'll see not between 95 to 97 k's an hour. Yeah. And I've got a 23 pitch trophy on this one. Yeah. And I had a 24 pitch on the Pro XS, because the different torque ranges on those ones with the red. And the whole shot with this 4-stroke blows you Opti out of the water. Just up on the plane, so much easier. Fuel economy is just crazy. Yes. Like if you just sit on that between that 3,500 and 4,000, I think I've something like 3.1 kilometres to the litre or something like that I'm getting out of it. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah, and full stick there's 1.7 or something like that. So yeah, fuel's not a problem. And then I don't have to worry about topping the oil up after a round or something like that as well. Nah, it's good. Well, that boat's got a lot of history. It won the Grim Grand Final in Foster in 2004, mate. So hopefully it wins another Grand Final in the near future for you. Well, I can only hope so, that's for sure. Mate, thank you very much for joining us on Lockdown Live. Hope we're keeping you and your club members down on the Clarence all excited. Sorry we're not visiting you this weekend, mate, but it is 100% out of our control. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. Yep, absolute pleasure, Steve. Thanks very much.
Oh, yep, get that in. Oh, fuck, get the net, quick, get it in, yeah, woo, woohoo, yes, yeah, boom, that's a 2-kegger, woohoo, yeah, oh my God,
that's up there, he is a donkey,
woohoo. Oh, on film. Sorry about that. Got a little bit excited. This is the second good fish we've got.
I think they're in under there.
This is starting to feel pretty special, isn't it? Whew. Look at this, that's a 50.
Well, there you go. How cool was that? Reminiscing with Anthony Duff about those great images that he took with only a few grams separated $50,000 or $60,000 boat from bugger all. And that last clip there, that was Joey Urquhart going absolutely nuts. We call that, I think, going Ike, when he weighed that 50-centimetre fish out of the river. So many awesome memories out of that river, and so many awesome memories from our time while we could still go tournament fishing there. We've got a section coming up with Mike Nelson, who was the two-time champion there. Remember, if you haven't edited the Where You're From com, drop it in the chat there. Drop your favourite Rapala in the chat there, and you may be able to take home that Rapala pack. Let's have a couple of words from our sponsors and then talk to Mike, the gun on the Clarence, Nelson.
What them sons of fishes up to now?
Fellas, I give you the force trolling motor. It is the most powerful, the most efficient on the water.
Yep. Most powerful. We're really in trouble now.
And it's quiet, too. You can't swim here. What a dumb bass.
Hi, I lost a big fish earlier today. Wasn't using Sufix. It was about this big.
Look, slow down there, cowboy, okay? A fish in the lost a van, huh? You want your fish. Sorry, honey, that fish is gone.
Always use the best line, Sufix 832.
All right, we all know that this weekend would have been the Clarence Megabass sponsored round of the Sufix BASS Pro Series. Of course, COVID has put the axe on that, but we thought what better than to get the person that's won the last two events in a row on that arena on the show tonight. Mike Nelson, welcome.
Hi, how you going, Steve?
Good, mate. You were probably the most pissed off angler in all of Australia when it came to having to postpone this tournament.
Oh, look, I was looking really forward to it, to be honest, but I was also a little bit stressed out too. There'd be a lot of expectation this weekend if we're up there, that's for sure.
That's right, mate. You won three in a row. Everyone goes, I would have expected that. And if you didn't win, it's like, yeah, told you it was no good.
That's exactly right.
Mate, it's been a real golden arena for you there. Did you fish the Clarence before this run of a couple of events? Had you fished the Clarence before that? Was it somewhere you put in a lot of time, or does it just suit your fishing style?
The only real work I've done up there on the Clarence was in the Brim tournaments in the years prior to the Bass rounds going into the rivers. So I hadn't really done much. The first round I ever done there was the round before where Ross won it, and I just missed out on that one. I didn't quite catch my bag limit on there. Yeah. But it's very similar to the home waterway, which is the Manning. So there's a lot of natural rock walls. There's all that sort of stuff is all very similar. So it sort of feels very much like at home there. So I'm chasing bass in the little punt up in the rapids. But, so it really suits my style.
Now, tell us a little about the history. If people don't know about Mike Nelson, mate, what do you do Monday to Friday, and where do you live? Obviously down in that the Manning River area.
Yeah, so I live in Taree, and I work for the local Water and Sewer Authority, which is now part of the council now. And so I do IT, with communications and server infrastructure for the entire environment.
Nice, mate. So you get to work in the sanitation part, but you don't have to touch anything dirty. I like that.
No, we get the glamorous part.
And tell us about your bass fishing history. We've seen you in Brim and bass tournaments in the past. How much bass fishing have you done in your life? Have you done heaps, or have you just sort of dabbled in it and then just got good at it?
No, well, look, the Brim fishing was the main aim for many, many years growing up, sort of further downriver, fishing for flatties and Brim with the old man. But as that sort of took off, I expanded out into bass and did a bit of offshore fishing. But the bass in this area is sort of like our barramundi. So, it hits harder, better strikes, better top water, does all the stuff the Brim does, but at sort of the next level. So the bass really was the priority in this
What
area.
is it in the water? What is it in the water down at Taree? Because it spits out some of the best tournament fishing we've ever seen, and it's been doing so for about 20 years. There's been such legends of the sport come out of that place. In the old days, it was the Andy Howards back in the Brimmen days. Chris Hicksons and Russ Babacools, and there's just an endless number of people that have come out of that joint. What's in the water? You should know. It's part of your job.
Yeah, look, I don't know, mate. It's like the Manning sometimes can be a hard fishery, so maybe that's got something to do with it. You got to work a little bit harder. I don't know, but we've got lots of options down here as well, which is probably helps. We've got bream, bass, we've got trout only an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So there's a whole lot of options here. So
yeah, you're all very good at a variety of species. Now, we've come to know you through the Clarence, and in the background here, we're going to have some of the highlights playing because you ran cameras for us on a couple of the days in your last couple of wins, which make a great keepsake for you when it comes to remembering your ABT tournament win. It's not just it's not the big check here that you're not going to get your hands on. You're not going to get your hands on yet. You've become known to us as a bit of a jig fisherman because you've used that tool to take the last couple of events out. I want you to give us a bit of a masterclass on jigging tonight. So if you were getting ready for the Clarence, what baits would you be packing? What tackle would you be packing? And what techniques would be going through your mind as what you're going to catch the fish on, mate? So I want you to educate me and all of our viewers tonight about how we can be better jig fishermen in the river.
Well, I mean, it's not all just jig fishing. It is definitely a tool that I like. It's quite versatile because you can use it almost like a plastic. You can fish it fast, slow, in timber, rocks, whatever. You don't get snagged either because they've got that good weed guard on them. A few little tricks on that to really, lock in that weedless sort of design. But this weekend, I'll probably do similar to what I've done last. I'd cover, pretty much each end of the river and check out where the fish are and see if I can find any reasonable schools of the larger fish. They do tend to hang around together, but they can be spread out on the snag, so you've got to be a little bit patient with them at times.
Yeah. Well, take us through your pre-fish day then. If you were fishing a pre-fish day, what baits would you have tied on? And we know you'd cover a lot of water because you've got that very flash Phoenix powered by Mercury there that you run around in, mate. And we loved filming that in the grand final last year. From the drone, you were a bit of a gallery player there, mate. But what baits do you have tied on the pre-fish to find those fish?
Yeah, look, certainly I'll have a few different jigs. I'll have a sort of a 1/8 jig, and that's sort of for the real shallow stuff because you can use them, you can skip them up into the trees, into the snags, and you can sort of use them like a weedless plastic, you might say, but still get a fair bit of movement and fishing pretty quick without, wasting a lot of time. 3/8 jigs, and I'll probably have a half ounce as well tied up for that deeper water, like around that 20 to 30 feet or so. I'll have probably a Z-Man paddle tail of some description tied on and a snake head or a weedless jig head.
Yep.
A couple of frogs. The Z-Man frogs are pretty good. Don't mind those. And that's probably the main three that I'll throw for the bass. Anything outside of that is really circumstantial, really, but those three usually cover most of your bases.
Yep, and then you would work out on that practice day by covering some miles and covering some water, just where and when the fish are going to be, and you'd give yourself a bit of a priority of spots that you wanted to hit. Now, take us through, again, because the jig side of it is pretty new. I know the Z-Man frogs are pretty new as well, but I think a lot of people are really interested in how someone masters the jigs like you do. Take us through a couple of the jigs that you use and any modifications that you do on those baits to make them more attractive to the bass.
Righto, so we'll start with probably my favourite jig and probably what everyone's seen on those videos, which is the 3/8 motion jig in black. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, no, that's you can see that.
I'm sure everyone's probably seen them 1,000 times by now. I don't really do too many modifications. It's pretty good as is. The only thing I will do is spread out the weed guard a little bit, which will give you a bit more protection as that jig rolls over and through the timber and rock. It gives you a little bit more protection for that hook point. That's the main modification on that. Not much else to be done. And then just choose a trailer, whether that's I often just use a 3-inch black gulp grub or any other sort of gulp variation, which I might have laying around the boat at that stage. But ultimately, you can catch the bass just on the jig. You don't even need the trailers. I think the trailer is really only beneficial often when you're fishing them really slow and they're getting the smell in their face and they're not sure if they want to eat it. I think that gives them that little bit extra to attack it. That's for sure.
Now, what about when we watched Carl Jocenson win his Elite Series event last year? He was throwing big jigs and he was drowning them in scent. You don't add any extra scent to them?
Not particularly. No. The gulps I find have got enough scent. Anything else that you might put on might stick the trailers together, which sort of reduces the action of the lure. But by using the gulps, you also don't have to keep spraying scent on them every second cast as well. So more often you got the jig in the water, you'll catch the fish.
Yeah, no worries. Now that's the same model of jig all the way through, or do you use a different model for the different weights?
Well, the motion jigs, they're mainly a lighter weight, so I think it's a 1/4 ounce and a 3/8. If we're going up to the 20-foot mark, 30 feet of water, 40 feet or so, I'll swap over to the Equip hybrid jig, which is a little bit different design, still basically a similar thing, just a little bit heavier to get down quicker if that's where the fish are.
Yeah, and do you do the same thing by splaying those weed guards?
Yeah, same thing. I'll squeeze them out just a little bit, just so in case that rolls over the tree or whatever, you won't grab the side of the hook.
Do you splay the weed guards just by hand, or do you use a tool to do that?
No, pretty much just squish it with the old finger there and lay them back down so you get that nice spread.
Nice. All right, so it's pretty easy. Then you whack your same sort of trailer on and away you go. Tell us about the tackle that you fish a jig on, because there's no 2-pound fluorocarbon going on with those guys, mate. You got to leave the brimming gear at home, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And especially with the jigs, the places you can get those things, if you're not fishing something pretty heavy, you're going to lose a lot of fish, that's for sure. So probably the favourite jig rod at the moment, it's a little bit left of field because a lot of people will use a longer rod for the jigs, but with the amount of river fishing I do, the shorter rod is actually beneficial for me because often I will skip those under trees and around things. So a bit shorter rod is actually pretty good for me. Probably my favourite one is the Muse Black by 13.
Yep.
That is a bit of a heavier rod. It's a 6 to 12 pounds, so it's heavy, but it's not ridiculous, So it's still got plenty of sensitivity, so you can feel those real light little plucks that the bass will sometimes, occasionally they'll hit it hard, they'll suck it in on one hit, but often they'll just peck at that lure like a little brim.
Now, we noticed that in your highlights that the rod, it does look a little bit shorter, and you don't like that net, mate. If it's got that hook in the mouth, you like poling it in, don't you? And you obviously need heavy, shorter braid and leader to do that.
Yeah, look, I figured if you're pulling the fish out of snags that hard with locked up drag, you can probably lift them into the boat. I probably lost less fish doing that than worrying about grabbing the net, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So pretty much to add up the combo, the reel is a 13 0, which is Concept 0, which is no ball bearings, really nice reel to use, super smooth, casts a mile, 10 kilos of drag, which is, plenty because I don't really use it. You just lock it right up, especially with the jigs. And then 15-pound Daiwa J-braid.
And that's the J-braid 4 or the 8?
The 8 strand. Yeah.
So the smooth stuff. And then what sort of leader do you tip that with?
The Gamma fluorocarbon. I know it's a little bit hard to get these days, but it's probably the best one I've found. You can rub that stuff over rocks, branches and stuff. It might scuff it a little bit, but it doesn't break. And that's the key, because these jigs, sometimes you're that deep in the timber, you just, when you hammer that hook home and you reef that fish in, they come bouncing through the timber and you don't have to worry about busting your leader.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? When you hook them deep in structure, there's no extra hooks. If there's a hook in the bass's mouth, it's not like a crankbait or a top water or something that's got that extra hook hanging around waiting to catch on a bit of snag or something like that. So I suppose if you are deep in country and it doesn't come out the first pull, you can be patient, can't you? Those things you can sort of, they untangle themselves sometimes.
Yeah, quite often. Like if you hit them hard enough, they generally will come out 90% of the time. Before they know it, they're already bounced over a few logs and they're out. But yeah, if they do occasionally get a hook up, it's just a bit of a 50-50. You will lose a fish if they get snagged on a tree occasionally. They can tend to pop those jigs out of their mouth. But bit of a 50-50 if you get snagged up.
Awesome, mate. So we've got the jig sorted, we've got the tackle sorted, and we've got a fair idea of where you're casting to. Give the guys that are watching this a tip on the retrieval of the jig. Like, you don't burn that thing back to the boat, that's for sure.
Not particularly, no, but I do like to fish it a little quick on occasion. It's really just a mix up on the location you're fishing, right? So, you know, quite often if you're fishing a bit of a shallower water, you'll go to the lighter jig. And if you can get it in close to that timber, often the bass will actually hit it on the drop. So you'll feel that tick and you just set that hook and you've got them straight up. Otherwise, they've seen it and they'll probably chase it down. Once it hits the bottom, give it a little rattle, give it a bit of a shake. If you don't get any interest, you know, you can fish it really slow. You can keep doing that all the way back to the boat. But what I often like to do is actually lift that rod and sort of swim that jig, say, a metre, get it moving, because bass obviously like movement more than brim or whatever. And then once again, sit it, move it, sit it, move it. And if you get a bit of a pluck or a bit of interest, then you can start shaking it to get them to eat the jig. But that's one of the tricks is swim the jig. Often you'll bounce over a rock or a bit of timber under the water. That's probably where the fish is going to be sitting. And then you can lift it over that log or that rock and entice that bite. Certainly if they're a little bit slow, that'll really trigger them to have a go at the jig, that's for sure.
Well, you're nearly hitting the fish in the head, aren't you? If there's a deep down snag in 20 foot of water and there's a fish sitting next to it and you crawled it over the snag, you're nearly dropping it on top of his head and that's going to get some sort of reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like anything like that, you're banging that heavy jig into the timber that's their home and they're getting a bit upset with that and quite often they'll bite it.
Now, let's talk about the jig bite. And again, the guys that are watching this that haven't fished a jig maybe aren't aware of how softly a fish can bite a jig. Like, for sure, you can feel a fish, you know, pluck or tap a jig as they eat it violently, but explain the softest jig bite you've ever got, because they're not uncommon, are they? The lines swimming away jig bites.
No, that's right. So if it's a bit of a slow day and you're daydreaming a little bit, you'll often cast in and the fish will hit that lure as it's sinking and swim directly at you. So you don't even notice what's happening until you lift your rod and you're going to sort of work that jig. Next minute, your line's underneath your boat and there's a fish on it. So it can be as light as that sometimes.
I think there's a real parallel between how people fish jigs and how people fish cranker crabs in the salt. Like, if you fish them too fast, you're a danger of maybe not getting the bites that you could get. So my parallel is a good cranker crab fisherman in the salt, which is what you are, can parlay into a good jig fisherman in the fresh. You just need to remember to swing that rod a bit harder when you're setting that hook.
Yeah, and that is actually the key. You've got to swing that rod pretty hard so you can squash down those weed guards and get that hook in, that's for sure. That is a big part of hooking those fish.
Again, if there are people watching this show that are trying to get their confidence up on jigs, what is your number one piece of advice for these guys to turn them from a clueless jig fisherman into someone that's getting honed in and knows what to do? What's your number one bit of advice?
Yeah, look, if you fish an area that you know and you've caught plenty of bass there before, grab a jig, put a trailer on it, maybe start with a lighter jig, maybe the 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce, something like that, something a little bit more that represents a plastic. Flip it in and just almost fish it like a plastic, but slow it down a little bit. Don't be scared of getting your jig right in the timber, dragging it over those branches one by one. Quite often, if you get hung up on a branch underneath, you can just shake it off and the bass will eat it off the branch. So just fish it slow, fish it in the timber, but don't be scared to get it right in there. That's probably the biggest key.
That's awesome, mate. And we really appreciate tonight your sharing of the techniques. Of course, ABT's motto is who shares wins. Let's assume that the Bass Tour may get going sometime later this year. How many events had you planned to fish this year? Obviously, I assume you're going to go to the Clarence and give it a bit of a whack.
Yes.
Have you planned any more events for this year? Maybe get up to Queensland and have a crack at that AOY?
Yeah, I was pretty keen. I'd sort of checked in for Kenya. So we had a little house lined up there with Jimmy Hickson and the boys and Chris and everyone. So I was going to do that. Wivenhoe was interesting. I've driven past it, never fished on it. That was a possibility, but probably Kenya was the big one, and then all the New South Wales rounds as well, of course.
Yeah. Well, like everyone else in ABT, we're just hoping that we can get on top of this virus quickly and contain it, eliminate it. And I suppose for tournament guys, it's not just the ability to go tournament fishing, like frivolous fishing, not fishing for a feed, but it's also able to cross state lines, because if we can do it at the moment, it's probably a 5-week trip, mate. Couple of weeks quarantine once you get in, a couple of weeks quarantine when you get back. So probably not worth it for the small payouts that we got, you know. So we're hoping that towards the end of the year we can get something going. Of course, in the Bass Pro Series this year, we're giving away a fantastic bluefin boat with a 115 horsepower motor on the back, on a trailer with lithium batteries and the whole kit and caboodle, mate. It's a pretty flash bit of kit, mate, and let's just have a little moment of silence about the Clarence this weekend because we're not going to be there. Okay, we're over it now, mate. Thanks very much tonight, mate. Have you got any sponsors that you want to thank and give a shout out to on this Friday night?
Well, 13 Fishing has been helping me for a few years now, so they're the main clue in the bass round, and also got a shout out to the boys at Glen River Marine because they hook me up with a lot of tackle. They look after my boat. I get a lot of good support from those guys as well. So thanks to them.
That's it, mate. How good is Cole on the spanners, mate? He's all right. He can keep he's fitted many motors for me over the years, and if I'm going past, I'll get a service of those guys. He's a whiz, isn't he?
Yeah, I wouldn't take my boat anywhere else. They certainly know what they're doing.
And a little bit of a warning for those guys looking to go to Glen River Marine. For God's sake, don't walk into the tackle shop. Like, a $200 service turns into a $1,000 day pretty bloody easy, doesn't it?
They've got every brim lure, every bass, cod, everything you'll ever need is in that shop.
And you got Chris Hickson sitting there just encouraging you gently to buy all of them. So, no, it's a great place to visit. If you pull in there, Jimmy makes you a cup of tea, Chris empties your wallet, Cole services your boat. What else could you want?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome, mate. Well, look, really appreciate you joining us tonight, mate. And let's hope that we can get on the water again on the Clarence pretty soon and get yourself a bit of a three-peat.
It'd be amazing, that's for sure.
Well, there you go. How good was it to get an absolute jig fishing masterclass off the man who's proved twice in a row that he knows exactly how to do it on a river at this time of the year. Mike Nelson, thanks very much for joining us. Mike is sitting in the chat room there as well as Anthony Duff. Those two guys are there and they are answering your questions on Clarence River, jig fishing, whatever you want to know about bass. Just quietly, Mike is a gun cranker crab fisherman as well. If you look in his library of the big brim that he's caught on those things, absolute freaking gun. We've got a few more segments with Carl Jocenson tonight. He's going to talk a little bit about AFC in the next segment. He's got some question and answers happening later on tonight that we've pre-recorded and we've got to him there. I messaged him before. I don't know if I've got him out of bed yet. It's like very early in the morning in the US. The sun is still down. And we have a really special story from him at the end. But let's have a little bit of a word from one of our sponsors. Make sure you've entered the comps. Let us know where you are. Let us know what your favourite Rapala is. And then we're going to come back with Carl Jocenson reminiscing about the time he won four AFC events in a row.
If you're Mark Healy, you don't just live on the water. You live for it. You get up, get your shades, grab a spear, grab a boat, grab a friend. Okay, take a breath. Hold it. Hold it. Here, hold this. Go, go, whoa. All right, now find something to jump off. It's probably too high. It wasn't too high. Time to get going? Time to keep going. How's that feel? And now this is living. For those who need water to breathe, Costa sunglasses.
So, Carl, welcome back. We're going through some of the history of what you've done, and we talked a bit about some of the early days in ABT, the fact you never missed an event in nearly 10 years before you took off to the USA. Back in the day, the real pinnacle for fishing in Australia was making the Australian Fishing Championships or the AFC TV show. You had to win a grand final or be an Angler of the Year. It was a real high bar we set to get in there, and we had a pretty solid bar at the bottom as well. Like, if you came last, we booted you out. And as you found out, it didn't matter if you were Timmy Morgan or Carl Jocenson, mate. If you were last, you were out.
Yeah.
Take us through some of your highs and lows of AFC, mate. I know you've had some incredible highs. You've had some pretty big lows as well. So let's start with the highs. Tell us about your best season on AFC.
Yeah, I tell people over here, and I tell the stories a lot, is like AFC and ABT, but AFC set me up over here. Like, this is why I've been able to be successful over here. And because people say, like, you might say, like, oh, it was a lot smaller, or it's nowhere near as big as over here. That wasn't the case for me. That was like, being a pro was like everything, through school, and teachers and people and everything always told me that, like, I'm never going to get anywhere fishing. It's not going to. So I had so many people to prove wrong, and I had no backup plan. This is what I'm going to do. No doubt, everything in my heart was like, I'm going to be a professional angler for the rest of my life, where every single person's telling me I can't. Well, when I would fail, those failures felt like I just let everything and everyone and everything around me down. It wasn't like I was fishing a little tournament with 20 people at Electric Comp. It was do or die for me, like, from really young. It was, and so those successes or the lows they felt to me like a guy winning the Bassmaster Classic. It was absolutely no different, because the money wasn't really in my mind. It was all about those accomplishments and making it and proving myself right in so many different ways. So the biggest thing that AFC did for me were the cameras and the helicopters and the boats and all of that stuff. There was so much pressure then. The world, it felt, in Australia was watching, and I was 18 or 19, I think. Maybe I was like 20, 21 when I first made it. And so those pressures and all of that, that's what set me up to be successful over here, because when I got here, I'd seen it all before. And then when I did make it and the cameras were in my boat, in my boat, I welcomed it, because even back then when AFC started, it was finally, I was like able to show people, like, look how cool fishing is. Look, we're on TV. There's helicopters. We've got bass boats that are doing, 70 miles an hour. Like, it was finally looking how it looked in my mind, and I could show people, like, look how cool fishing is, because through school it just wasn't cool, and it sucked to be that guy that just loved fishing, but no one sort of understood it. And football and all the other things were the cool things. Well, AFC was the start of all of that turning around. And so it wasn't me fishing a tournament. It wasn't it was literally like life or death. That's how it felt to me. Yeah. Like, that's what the pressures were. And when I finally made it AFC, it just was always like, I always had to, like, now I've got to step up. Now I've got to win. Now I've got to stay in there. And those pressures and all the things that came with all of those years just kept making me grow as an angler and a person and everything. It taught me so much. And, that I haven't looked at it for a while, but the win at Lentils is definitely one of the best.
Was it in season 2 or season 3? Was that your first ever win? Might have been season 2.
It was the first ever bass season.
Yeah, season 2, that would have been.
I think we fished Toowoomba, and I came fourth, so last. And so I was, like, devastated. So we go to Lentils, and, I had my practice, and then that's when I caught him on that top water, and I've still got him. I just dug through. I've still got that Zara spook, the chartreuse and green one. And I caught those fish, and we came in, and I didn't know, and I looked at the scales, and, like, you see my reaction, and when I just jump and go crazy, and that's just so real, because it just meant so much to me then. And then, it was all about just proving. I was always like the young guy. You don't know as much as the old guys, but I'm like, I've fished way more than all of these guys, like even the older guys. Like, so I always had something to prove, and always wanted to prove people wrong that were telling me that I couldn't do it, or I wasn't good enough, or I was too young, so those pressures are always just making me, like, drive further and further. And the same thing happened when I came here. It was a big, huge step, but those foundations had been built so strong for 10 years of competitive fishing non-stop that sort of, it just built the blocks for me not to fail over here no matter what. You know, it was, success was always going to happen because I'd already had all of those sort of formulas set. And then when I failed here, I was like, it wasn't as bad because I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to get better, and I'll get better next year, and I'll win the next year. And that kept happening until, you know, I became, you know, the angler I am now and have that trophy. And you know, it still hasn't stopped here. There's still tons to do.
Awesome, mate. For me, one of the highlights was in this season 3 of AFC. And we've got all of these episodes going live on our YouTube channel as soon as this show is finished. So if people want to watch the series where you won 4 events in a row and pissed off Harry Watson so bad because he just wanted to beat you all the time and he couldn't, you had the 4 events here. There were 2 in Queensland and 2 New South Wales, Lenthal's, Cania, St Clair and Glenbourne. Run us through that party of life. Like, when you're on a roll, aren't you?
Yeah. And that's with fishing, it's momentum. And I was just sort of starting to get my confidence. You know, so many different things happened. Like one time before that, I remember I came like 10th at Boondooma, and when I walked up to the stage, I had my head down because I was disappointed. I come 10th out of and we had like 70 anglers or 70 boats at that event. Scully rang me and got real mad at me. He made me cry. I still remember it on the phone. He was like, there was all these little things that happened, and then I was taking it so serious that I was starting to not enjoy it, much because it was just like, I have to do well or I'm going to fail or this is going to happen. And then that's when I kind of ran into Timmy. And so Scully had said that to me, and I was like, man, sometimes it takes someone to say something to you to realize what you're sort of doing. I wasn't like laughing and having fun. It was dead serious all the time. And so then I ran into Timmy, and then we just hit it off, and it was just nonstop laughs. And he showed me that you can have fun and laugh and do all of those things that we love about fishing and still be successful. You didn't have to be dead serious to be successful. So Tim taught me so much about that. And so when I went into that season, that was the momentum of that. And I was just enjoying it, having fun. Me and Tim were fishing together. We were a team. We were in the boat together. And we would practice together back then, and we would just have fun. And I don't know what year that was, but this is how crazy it is. I've been with Humminbird my whole life, but we side imaged those bass at Cania on a Humminbird, was side imaging, and we saw them on the side imaging up the river sitting off that drop off. And I still remember those first couple of catches. I throw the Bassman up there, and it was like a colour that I'd created with Glen, and I was rolling it off the edge, and I'm like, it's touching the bottom, and I'm like, when it comes off, that's when they should hit it. And then those bass would just smash it. And, that we were wearing the Humminbird jerseys back then, but that was when that's when I learned so much about the technical side of things and the Humminbirds and the side imaging, and that's where all of that started. And so those 4 events were probably the most important 4, I'd say, where I just sort of proved myself that Lentils wasn't a fluke, or this win wasn't just a win. Like when I won on a Bassman, then I won, on a Jackal, then I won dropping soft plastics down the trees at Glenbourne. And then on Topwater, I was showing my versatility and how much I learnt. So that was probably the proudest year, I'd say, that I had in Australia, just because that's when I was starting to show, I'm not just here just lucky or just fishing or just for something. Of this is what I've been doing ever since I can remember, and now it's starting to show. Yeah.
Now, what happened was the season after that, I think, was the one where you fished and the stars didn't line up and you actually got kicked off the show. But what it resulted in was a job for you hosting on AFC, and so you built a lot of media skills that would have become very useful for you moving forwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, I look back so much. One of the probably best things that anyone's ever taught me was Gene, and everyone knows Gene Eisman's been a big mentor and friend of mine. And I was in a real low point over here, couldn't make it, struggling, and I think Chris was too, and I think he had his first loss in boxing. And we were Chris was over here training cleaning or doing something, we were kind of like, man, like we can't get anything going. It was a struggle and lots of stuff was happening to us. And Gene said, tell me something right now that you've been sick in the guts from, worried about, stressed about like crazy, that's still bad right now to this day. And so I started thinking of all these things, and I'm like, oh, this, and then as I would go to say it, I'd be like, oh, that worked out pretty good. And then Chris had come up with something, then he's like, oh no, if that didn't happen, this wouldn't have happened. And we started thinking of it, and so many of those things happened that I'm like, man, I wish I didn't stress so much about those things. And I stressed a lot that year, like, man, I got kicked out, it's the worst. But the best thing ever happened, I got to, host the AFC with Adam and Beatty and learn so much from those guys, and like grew as then down the track I did Fox Sports interviews and on the Today Show, and those things, like I wouldn't have been able to do them without those smaller lead ups, without getting thrown into the deep end. I'd learned from the cameras, seen the guys working it, and then got to do it, and I got to sit back and see the guys fish, and it was just a big learning curve.
That's awesome, mate. Some of what we used to do in the old days, we had the big printed glossy tournament angler guide, which everyone looked forward to coming through. It was the days before social media, really, and it's a little bit more disjointed now, the media. But back in those days, we had the AFC profiles with the anglers' names and all the stats about them, and we had a few nicknames for you there that you acquired on tour, and I want you to tell me how you got them. Firstly, Hank Jr. Tell us that one. And if you don't, I'm gonna. So I'm telling you now.
You might have to, because it's got to be, Hank's got to be something to do with, because I was using the jackal or lipless so much, and Harry was called Hank or something like that.
Harry, and we'll talk to Harry, I'm sure, on the show about how Hank was invented. But because you flogged Harry 4 times in a row in that season through, I'm pretty sure that you got the nickname Hank Jr. because of that, because you out-Hank Hank himself.
Yeah.
The next one I've got is Pockets.
Yeah,
Pockets
I know that one.
that was the production crew, and why did they call you that?
Yeah, I always had my hands in my pockets, and they wanted them folded in front, but everyone else did, and I always had them in my pockets. So it was sleeve, and I got sleeves there at one stage because I had my sleeves all the time.
You were always like
and
this.
I still do it.
That's right. And Rob Peel the whole time, Carl, pull your sleeves down. You pull them down, and then 2 seconds later they'd be up again.
Yeah.
It's like they had elastic in them, pulling them up your arms.
Yeah.
The other one was, I think this might be a Timmy nickname, the golden tapeworm.
Yeah, tapeworm is just from just how much I'd eat. It was just, and it's still the same, just bags of food in the boat, just never enough.
And the golden tapeworm, of course, because you ate all the food and won all the tournaments. So that's how some of those nicknames came around, mate. And if anyone listening now, hang around till the end of the show, because we've got a great eating story after the close of the show that's in the bloopers. I'll give you a heads up for that now.
You got to
any other nicknames I've missed out on, mate?
You got to ask Timmy about I forget who made them, but I think someone made. I think Sue. I think your mum made like these real good cookies, and she like left them out, like whatever they were, and I was just eating them like crazy. And then Tim went to have one, and he was like, they were gone, and he looked at me and he's like, how many did you have? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, you just ate all of my mum's like biscuits and I didn't get any. He's like, how do you feel? And I said, full. And he loved it. He chased me around a little bit after that.
Well, it's not hard to outrun Timmy, mate. If you win the first 2 steps, you got the race won.
A good couple steps.
Mate, we're gonna tie this segment up right now, but we're gonna come back in a while and take some questions from our viewers of the show. They've sent in on video, and we're gonna answer some of their questions. So we'll see you again soon.
Wait.
What do you see?
Reminds me of muskies.
I love your mind.
They call it a bucket mouse because he's got a bucket mouse.
Wow.
I just want to tell you, I've been slaying the walleye lately.
That is so hot.
Ever bump the stump?
Sufix 832, the line that changes the game.
Well, there you go. Isn't that great having some insight from Carl Jocenson about his time on the AFC and the highs and the lows and how they've prepared him to be the absolutely gun angler that he is today. Just a quick shout out that the comps are all going really well. Let us know where you're from. You can win the Carl Jocenson shirt AFC packs. Let us know what your favourite Rapala is. We got the Rapala pack here with all lures and stuff in it. And the Suck Up to Nicole comp. She's the one putting this all together behind the scenes. Nicholle is the way you spell her name. Give us some compliments there and she will very subjectively pick out someone to win an ABT tournament jersey and some Costa merchandise. Now, there are a few segments left on the show. We've got Glen Casey coming up from Bassman Spinnerbaits, and I'm pretty sure Glen's online chatting now for all of your spinnerbait questions. We have Rob Kneeshaw showing us his Mercury-powered boat, and we have Carl doing some question and answers, and of course that special segment afterwards. So let's get straight into it. Let's have a chat to Glen Casey from Bassman Spinnerbaits.
So in ABT Lockdown Live, we try to track down the absolute legends of the sport, and I've got one with me right here. I've got Glen Casey, who is, you know, doing things as he normally does, sort of socially isolating himself out just west of Byron Bay. Glen, good to see you there in the shed. This is where all the magic happens, isn't it?
Mate, it sure is. Good to see you, Steve. Yeah, well, really no difference in it. For us, me and Susie, just 24/7 in the house, in the shed. So, yeah, not much difference.
So your commute to work is how far? About, what, 20 feet, 30 feet?
Oh, look, it might stretch a little bit more, maybe 50 feet.
Yeah, 50 feet to work, mate. And just to put everyone in the picture, I think I caught my first bass where the river crossing is at Nashua there. How far is that away from your house?
Oh, well, when I was a kid, I used to live near there, and that's probably 15 minutes away.
There you go, mate. So I know the part of the world you live in. You're surrounded. Well, they don't call them bass there; they call them perch, don't they? You're in the perch capital of the world, right where you are.
Definitely, mate. Definitely.
Now, for the viewers that don't know the history of Bassman Spinnerbaits, you acquired the business from Robin Sattler, and in the early days of ABT, there will be some guys that are watching now who would have known Ron Sattler and Robin Sattler came to the early events. They came in their wagon. They lived on site there, and they would custom make you spinnerbaits. And it was a really cool service. You'd rock up and you'd say, I want this blade, that skirt. And by the end of the session, they'd have a spinnerbait made for you, mate. It's come a long way from the early days in the back of the camper van, hasn't it?
It sure has, mate. Yeah, I was lucky enough. My actual first ever spinnerbait, I actually bought off Ron himself. That was when he come to a Bass Classic down here at Lismore. And, mate, ever since then, I'd been using them, following it along until Ron's passing, and then Robin had it for a couple of years and then put it up for sale, and yeah, that's when Susie and I acquired it. So yeah.
The other bit of the backstory as well is Bass Lodge it's set upstream from Kempsey on the Macleay River. They actually lived and worked out of this unique lodge in a unique part of the world. Have you ever been up to Bass Lodge?
Mate, I've been there a few times, stayed there a fair few times as well. Mate, it is just like the log cabin from America built on the top of the Macleay. It is like walking into Bonanza, if some people remember that. You know, it is just an awesome log cabin. And I think it's still available to rent for families and that for weekends and that sort of thing. It is magic spot.
No, there are owners there, and I think they have some cabins on there as well now. So it is a lovely part of the world. Now, from those early days, those guys really specialised in bass lures, but nowadays you make a hell of a lot more than just for the humble Australian bass. Like, it's probably not even your major market anymore. Tell us what markets your business services?
From bass, yellowbelly. Majority of it is Murray cod these days.
Yeah.
And then Matt Amstead just went to Colombia and wanted a couple of spinnerbaits to do for the peacock bass, mate. Wow. And we done a couple for him, and yeah, he was pretty happy with that. So it was awesome. So just about everything we're sort of close to spinnerbait wise.
Yeah. No, anything that's got a spinning blade on it, mate, you've got your finger in that pie there. But let's backtrack a little bit as well and talk about one of your longest term sponsored anglers. And let's just face it, You did all right when you picked this fella to come and be on the team. Someone who's socially isolating in the central south of America at the moment, mate, Carl Jocenson. Were you like everyone, all the rest of my mates, and were you sitting there with tears in your eyes when he finally won that elite event?
Mate, we sure will. Susie and I were sitting here watching it. Yeah, tears rolling down the face, mate.
Yep.
It was just such a proud moment to see him come from where we did to now. Was just he's awesome, and got a lovely girl now too.
Oh, it is. He's living the dream, isn't he? We all love living vicariously through Carl, but he's done some pretty good work getting the Bassman brand from out at, are you at Clunes or Bexhill? Where are you in northern New South? You're at
Bexhill.
At Bexhill? Like, it's a small part of northern New South Wales, mate, but your brand name is now known amongst the COVID champions of the world in America.
Well, it is. You know, some of the people he's actually associated with and that as well, it's been fantastic. Like today, we not only we sponsor Carl, we sponsor Seth Bider, Josh Douglas, and we picked up Chris Grow at the start of the year as well, and a couple of other boys. And mate, it's awesome.
How good is Seth Fighter? They call him the amazing fighter man, but he's got the Joe Dirt haircut, and he is about Australian as you can get in America, isn't he?
Exactly. Mate, he's just a really cool dude. I suppose that's the best way to put it. He's just a really nice fella and real genuine too. Yeah.
Mate, that's awesome. And you've taken the opportunity to get over to America yourself. Tell us about your last trip to America.
Was Carl's wedding. Mate, that was fantastic. It was a quick trip, but it wasn't long enough, like all our trips. But to go over there and celebrate his wedding with him and Kayla and all the other Aussies that went it was fantastic. It was a really good trip.
Well, that's awesome because we've got Carl on the show later tonight answering some questions from some of the guys that watch ABT Lockdown Live. Let's shift focus a little bit because this weekend should have been the Megabass round of the Sufix BASS Pro Series on the Clarence.
Yes.
For the last few years, ABT's really got into and started to enjoy running tournaments on rivers. You know, we love doing them in the Richmond. We all remember the one in the Richmond where Joey Urquhart just missed out on winning himself a Bass Cat. And this weekend on the Clarence would have to be one of the events where people ring me up afterwards and say, Morgo, I had such fun fishing that river. There are so many bass in such a long part of that river. It must be cool to have that nearly in your backyard.
Oh, mate, it is fantastic. I'm lucky enough. I don't fish that bottom end too much at all, but I fish up towards Tabulum Way and that all on the top of the Clarence a bit, and I absolutely love it. Such a big river. It is just enormous. Yeah, it is fantastic.
Tell me about your personal best bass out of the Clarence. I know we've all caught fish over 50 in there because they get up into those water holes and sometimes they don't move for a long time. How big is your biggest bass and what did you catch it on down in the Clarence?
Well, I haven't got a photo, but you can ask Danny Robinson because he was with me when I got it.
Yes.
But she went 58 to the fork.
Wow.
On the Broadwater, on that top end of the Clarence we went to, and it was caught on a 3/8 Bassman spinnerbait in Scully's colour. So he will love that.
Wow, there you go. Scully's still having his fingers in all the pies, even though he hasn't fished the tournaments for a while.
It sure was, yeah.
And we have Scully going to come on the show. I only talked to him earlier in the week. We're going to have a segment with Scully on the show because he really is like the Gandalf of bass fishing, isn't he?
Oh, mate, he is an absolute gentleman and a scholar. And, the wealth of knowledge that fella's got is just amazing.
Mate, I've got one more question before we stop talking to you. And if you were going to buy a spinnerbait, the fishing for bass in a tournament in Australia, and you wanted to take it to any river or lake to go to, what is the Bassman spinnerbait that is the must-have in every tournament angler's tackle box? Just explain what's the weight, what's the configuration, and what's the colour.
Well, if I had to pick one with what has just come along and what we have just done with Carl, it would have to be, I've actually got one here, I can show it to you.
There you go. I thought you might have had one laying around.
Yeah, it's actually that, can you see
hold her
that?
up, hold her up to the camera.
Yeah.
Bit higher. There you go, that's it, explain it.
Now, this is the reconfiguration we actually done for the boys in the US. Okay, so it's a new Super TW. We redesigned the wire and blade configuration with it. Okay.
A little bit higher. That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
And Carl will actually hate this, but it's in JP's colour. JP designed this skirt, and mate, I've caught so many good fish on this one in the local river, and this is one I would take with me anywhere.
And you would take that largemouth or Australian bass?
Exactly, mate. I would take this one anywhere with me. Oh, well, put it this way, I won't leave home without one.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you only had to leave home with one, that's the one that you'd leave home with. Good stuff.
That's it. Definitely.
Now, tell us if people haven't got a Bassman spinnerbait in their local tackle store, how do they get hold of a Bassman spinnerbait? Give us some websites and some ways to get hold of them.
Okay, they could go straight up. They can get in contact with us and we can direct them to the store.
Yep.
Or they can go straight to Mo Tackle, has an awesome range of Bassmans for bass and also Murray cod. If they're in Victoria, they'd chase up like Trellies down in Victoria.
Yep.
Or even in Brisbane, they could chase up the boys from Tackle Warehouse and that in Brisbane, have a range of Bassmans and that there. Or if they're in somewhere else, they can give us a holler. And I'd have to mention Fish and Bits at Toowoomba do have a great range of Bassmans as well.
Yeah,
So-
I'd expect that to happen because I know you're you like the whole Jocenson family because I've seen you at a couple of Chris George boxing bouts, mate. You don't mind that as well, do you?
No, mate, I don't mind a little bit of a stink every now and again. So, yeah, no, mate, they're a really good country people, and I think that's what holds them in good stead all around the world. Put it that way.
That's awesome, mate. Mate, I really appreciate your time, and ABT appreciates the sponsorship that you've continued ever since the early days of Ron and Robin Sattler, and it's come all the way through today. I know we're in difficult times at the moment and we can't fish tournaments, but when we're up and running again, mate, we'll be up and we'll be pushing your brand as usual because ABT and ABT Anglers, we love you there at Bassman, mate. Thanks for helping us out through the years.
Thank you very much, Steve. Much appreciated, and we'll be there as long as I've got Bassman as well.
Good stuff, mate. We'll catch you next time.
Have a good one.
This is Rob Kneeshaw here. This is my Nitro 640. One of the smaller bass boats that you can get, but does everything that I need. It's sitting on a Torex trailer. Got that through Raffy at Blazenby Marine. It's brand new. So haven't worn it in, but looking forward to taking it on a few road trips. Have a motor guide, 82 pound up the front, and have two Lowrance sounders, a HDS 8 up the front, which is one of the older, I think, Gen 2 models, and have a Lowrance HDS 7, which is a touchscreen Gen 3, which is pretty cool. So I can find the fish at the back and then still see stuff up the front, which is great. They're all connected up. That's the dash there. Got lots of storage space. Got my rod locker at the side here. So got my net and my rods in there. Have another side on the other side. I've got tackle boxes. I'll swing around the other side and show you that later. Room under the seats. You can lift up the seats. Heaps of room under there. Two storage compartments, one for my non-boater and one for myself, and then have a live well, which it's a bit dark at the moment, so you can't really see it, but pretty standard. I have a massive fuel tank at the back for a small boat, so it's like a 100-litre tank and goes all weekend. Have a battery on that side which charges the motor and the electronics, and then have the 2 batteries at the back for charging the electric. Of course, this is all powered at the back by a Mercury, 90 horsepower, and yeah, awesome little motor that makes this one scoot along. Given its size, it's 17 foot, I think, so the boat certainly moves when it's got that thing firing at the back. New little addition that I've got is I've got a little GoPro clamp, and I've attached a GoPro camera to film and do some fun stuff. And then, so my storage here, I've got my all my safety equipment and my more lures and different things, anchor and a few things like that, some ropes. So yeah, this is my boat. This is my baby, and I love it. You might also notice there's a US Open bass sticker there. I did that the other year with Tony Neal and had a ball at that one, and I lent my boat out to him and it's come back with a sticker on it, so I didn't put that one there, but thanks Tony. And yeah, so this is my ride.
Well, there you go. Thank you there, Steezy, for making every brim that all of us have ever caught seem inadequate after those giants on that cranker ad. And a big thank you to Glen Casey for being such a great supporter of ABT and sharing us those stories. And Rob Kneeshaw, the first guy that was in with his Show Us Your Boat segment powered by Mercury. Rob, you got some great Mercury merchandise coming your way. If you want to know how to do it, just go to the ABT Facebook page. There's a video there showing you how to do it. Post the video up and tag Australian bass tournaments in it. That's how you do it. Post it on a Facebook page, tag us in it so we know it's there, and worst case scenario, send us a message so that we know that the video's there and we can use that video on the show. You might win a Mercury motor cover at the end. We've got some winners. Nicole has been busy picking the winners. Where Are You From winner wins the Carl Jocenson shirt, and you'll have to get us your size, as well as the AFC DVDs. That's Vince Polomini from Currajong in New South Wales. Vince, send us a message to our Facebook page, and we can get that sorted for you. The Rapala pack with 3 Rapala lures, some VMC hooks, the braid, the pliers, etc. That is Graham and Stephanie Walker. It's probably Stephanie actually, because Stephanie's favourite lure is the X-Rap XR8-OG. Very specific, knows exactly what lures they like. So they win the great Rapala pack. Go in the mail this week. And which I thought the funniest comp of the night was the Suck Up to Nicole comp. She said on the chat here that she is very embarrassed. Good work, guys. Keep on embarrassing her. She does a great job behind the scenes with all the ABT media, etc. That winner is Scott Pierce. Scott said, for putting this show together, Nicole is better than all of my fishing gear together. So that obviously hit the mark there. You get yourself an ABT jersey. We need to know your shirt size as well. Cost to cap at a whole cost of merchandise pack. Guys, message us your address on our Facebook page, which is ABT Tournaments on Facebook. We're going to get that gear to you. A question on the live stream chat we had here was, what's happening? Are the events cancelled or are they postponed? Well, because this COVID thing is a very flexible, fluid deal, we're not cancelling events until we're getting to within a couple of weeks of them. Then what happens is they become postponed. If we can go fishing in a month because there's no COVID cases left in Australia, we're going to do our best to make up the tournament season. If it goes on for 6 months and we have to, we've got a few options. We may cancel some events. We may make the end of the season in the middle of next year. But we're very flexible at ABT, and we're going to be able to organise a situation where you guys can get tournament fishing again, because you're probably as sick as me of being in this room. This room is, I'm tired of it. I work in here. I do ABT Lockdown Live in here. I eat my lunch in here. I don't get out of house much anymore. So just like you, I want to get out there and get tournament fishing again. We've got a couple more segments to go. The next one is Carl's question and answers. Thank you very much to everyone who videoed a question and sent it in. Let's get onto that section because there's some gold in there.
G'day Carl, just curious to know, on practice days, how much time you spend between actually fishing or cruising around on your sounder looking for fish. Is it 50-50? Is it more time fishing, less time on the sounder? Yeah, that's my question. And that says, what do you think it says? Thanks, mate.
No way. Oh, wow. That is awesome. That is cool. No
So there you
way.
go, mate. A little surprise from Jack. Jack's from Tasmania, and he believes in it so much. Where's your tattoo with that on? Where is it?
It's going to be my first tattoo, but I'm going to have to get it now. He's stepped it up. But, yeah, that's the one I want to get. So that is awesome. That just gave me goosebumps. That was awesome.
Well, let's answer the question, mate. Your pre-fish day, how do you do it? More time on the sounder, more time driving around fishing? What do you do?
Yep. So that's all depends on time of the year. So it's all depends on, spring, winter, spring, summer, and then you have your fall. But all of our tournaments are pretty much spring, summer. And so early in the season, it's hardly anything idling looking at the sounder. It's all to do with those fish being up shallow, wanting to go to spawn. So it's a little bit different to Australia, but it's the same because Australia, when those bass are shallow, it's all about finding what banks, what points, what lures, what baits they want to be on and figuring them out up on the bank. And then it's more looking at your sounders from the front of your, from the front. So I'm looking at 360, I'm looking at mapping, and I'm looking at down imaging, but I'm also casting to the bank and looking for structure. So early in the season, it's, 80-20, 80% fishing, 20% on the graphs. That's about it. And the majority of my graph viewing is lake master mapping. So I'm looking at mapping, contours, points. I'm looking for where those fish might be staging and then moving up, but it's majority going to be shallow. And then as we get later in the season, it's going to totally flip. It's going to be 80-20. All I'm going to be doing is looking for those fish offshore. And when you have confidence in your sounders and those fish are offshore, it can actually turn into 100%, like literally not making a single cast for 3 days straight. All you're doing is searching. So it's definitely it's just not a one-off thing. It's going to depend on the lake, the clarity of the water, how those fish relate. And so Tennessee River and current lakes, the fish really relate offshore. You're going to be spending a lot of time on your sounders. And then Oklahoma or down south and or rivers, and the fish are going to be on the bank around structure. It's going to be all looking at lake master, running to areas and then fishing.
Okay, well, congrats on the big win. Just hoping you can give us some insight into processes, techniques, things like that of assessing a dam you've never fished before or a dam you've fished previously but conditions have changed, time of year, water levels, things like that. And where you start and how you work out where the fish are and crack the pattern for a tournament.
Yeah, thanks for the question, mate. That's awesome. That's probably one of the most popular questions that we get as professional anglers. It all starts right here where I'm sitting in front of the computer. So as much off-water study that you can do before you hit a lake, the better. The biggest thing you don't want to do with fishing is guess. You don't want to guess anything. You want to know about the lake. So the first thing we want to know is what's in there, what species we're chasing. So in Australia, let's just say Australian bass, what lake is it? Okay, let's look at what the bait source is. That's going to be the very first thing. The only thing Australian bass are thinking about in the lakes is eating. That's what they want to do. So we've got to find out what they want to eat, and that's the same over here. All I'm looking for is what are those fish mainly feeding on? Is it crayfish? Is it shad? Is it big shad? Are they small? There's much study, and there's so much out there. You can just learn all of that. So once I figure that out, then I can start to break it down and figure it out. So I'm pretty much going to do all my study first in front of the computer, but way long before I even put that boat into the water. That's the number one most important thing. I'm going to do research. I'm going to try and see what happens at this time of year, maybe what those fish are doing at the time of year that I am going, or just before it, in case like the year is later or earlier in the season. So try and get that study in and know as much as you can about that lake. What's the water color like? How much rain have they had? How you should be able to look at the dam level, and study it so you've when you put that boat on, you've got a really good idea, and you've got baits on that are going to suit exactly what you're doing, because it's all about time. You don't want to waste time. It's about efficiency, getting on the water and breaking it down. The best anglers in the world are the best at breaking something down as fast as faster than the rest, pretty much. Everyone can figure it out in the end. Depends how long you need. Well, in a tournament in Australia, you got 1 day. Here we've got 2.5, and sometimes you've never ever been to that lake. And so 10 killer, once it got changed there, I'm just studying, watching videos, I'm looking at mapping, I'm looking at what they feed on, what time of year it is, how they have been caught in the past, what it's been won on in the past. But then also the biggest one is don't get too caught up in that. Get your mind around it and get an understanding, but then attack it in your way and keep an open mind, because those sometimes if you learn off a local, those techniques get worn out day after day after day, and those fish become different. And if you don't understand that spot or that area like those guys, like a local does, then you're not going to hit it exactly right or perfectly. So you're better off finding your way. So pretty much for me, I get an understanding of a lake first, and then I go and fish it my own way and keep a very, very open mind with it. So that would be the biggest thing. Don't guess. Make sure you know what the bait source is, number one. Know where those fish sit, how it has been won in the past, how they have caught them, how they do catch them. And then also throw your swing on things. Make sure you try something different. Have that Hail Mary sitting there ready to go. Have those couple baits on that are sneaky, that work in your lake but haven't been tested on this lake. Like, that's a big one. I haven't had success yet here using Australian techniques, like totally, but I've always got them because I know when it happens, it's going to be something that they just haven't seen. Sometimes over figuring out exactly what they want, better is showing them something that they've never seen before. That's a really big one. These fish get accustomed to seeing baits. They know how things work. When they see something different, they tend to be a lot more aggressive. So I'd say do your research, do your study, but then also keep an open mind and have those different baits that work, your confidence baits that work for you. A big tip is get confidence in all your different techniques and baits that work for Australian bass or for your species that you choose. For me, I have all confidence baits on the deck. And when I have like a certain technique where I'm like, man, they smash them on that, but I'm not confident in it, I work my butt out trying to figure out how to get confidence in that technique. And then I don't waver too much either side of it. When they're on a jerk bait, I pick up the rod that I've caught 1,000 bass on that jerk bait. I'm not like trying something crazy and different that I've never caught them on in the past. It's like, that's a jerkbait that gets bites. I know they eat that. Now I'm going to try it here. And so all of my techniques, I have these little confidence baits and confidence ways. And as I don't have them, I learn them more on something else. And then from that confidence bait, you can work outside of that either way. But try and get those baits that you have a lot of confidence in and have them on the deck and go.
Awesome answer, mate. We've got a question here now from Joey Urquhart, if you want to have a look at your window there. Joey Urquhart, maybe the one above that question you just answered there. Have a crack at that one from Joey, because he was our Bass Electric Grand Final winner last year, and he is the 100% the biggest Carl fan.
Another one, mate. So I guess everyone knows sort of what you like to fish here in Australia, but if you could pick one lure, one rod and reel combination and one lake over in America to fish, what would it be? And also, mate, keep up the great work. You're absolute inspiration to any Aussies wanting to go over there. Sensational to watch. You're an absolute top advocate for Australia. So, mate, keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, East, mate. Appreciate it. It's awesome. Yeah, it's unreal. It's just unreal to hear the guys and the Aussie accents and the passion and just them following it. You know, it's funny, when I first left, I was like, man, all my hard work that I did in Australia for 10 years is gone because I'm going to leave the country and everyone's just going to be like, well, you're done or whatever. But so that was a big reason for me, like actually not wanting to leave. I'm like that's was one of the things. And to see the Aussies continue to follow me over here, and it to get bigger and better and them really get behind me means a lot. So thank you very much for that. One thing over here, as you know, like the glide bait, for me, you know, bass fishing and fishing in general, I love doing it all. Doesn't matter what it is. If we're going fishing, I'll take a tiny little rod and catch baby fish in a little river. I love it. But my real, you know, the thing that gets the blood going and gets the heart rate going and makes me feel like a kid again is barramundi and Murray cod. They're the two ones that bite and that big fish, and you don't know what you're going to catch and how big it's going to be, and you have no control. That's what does it for me. So in America, we would fish all year, and it's all about catching numbers and some size. But when I figured out the glide bait deal, it really gave me the feeling of fishing for big Murray cod or big barra. And so you've seen me sort of progress and grow with that bait and that technique, and it's because it gives me that same sort of feel. And so I'm very lucky where we live. I'm 15 minutes from Lake Chickamauga, which has been the #1 lake in the US for a while. It has the certain species of bass that just grows giant in here, and that's my deal. Like if I can just take a Miller Rod Dream Freak, Shimano Tranks 400, 25-pound fluorocarbon, 7 to 12-inch glide bait. I've got my new Molex one that I've been doing really well with, and I can pick that up and I can go fishing and not get a bite and be perfectly happy. So you know that's why it's a technique that I love, because I'm happy to throw it daylight till dark, not get a bite, and be like, that's fine, I'll come back tomorrow. And when you get that bite, it makes all those hours worth it.
Mate, let me just put in a little extra on that question. Glide bait, Chickamauga, pre-spawn, or Faust, slick rig, just on dark? What's a better fish to catch?
Oh, yeah, you can't go past the barra. When that sun's just going down past that mountain and they're starting to come past side imaging and you're just rolling a swim bait back, that's what gets you the sick feeling in your stomach.
And that's just one more on top of that. Do you think the Americans know, like they're used, like an American can catch a 13 or 14 pound largemouth, but do you reckon they know how destructive a metre-5 barra is on plug casting tackle? Do they actually understand?
No, it's hard to explain it. Like this closest thing I've seen over here are snook, and the snook are really similar, fight the same, and you fish them with bait cast tackle. And dingo actually is a Jared Boschhammer. He's a guide down in Florida, and he's doing it at a Jupiter, and he's showed me a lot. And that's the closest thing I've seen. But for the bass guys, I just tell them over here, I'm like, it's exactly like bass fishing. It is literally identical, except for when you hook it, it could be 100-pound fish that's going to scream drag and you're going to have zero control over, and they're going to eat frogs and swim baits and everything in between. So the draw card for bass anglers over here is the same tackle. Like that's the main thing. It's like you're in the same scenario and you've got the same rod and reel, except the fish are just, you can't pick them up. And so it's so hard to explain that fast bite and then that 10 seconds after that bite of just zero control. Most people that go over there, Oliver and I just went over there, and like as soon as they go over and catch cod and barra, they're going to do it every year. And that's the one thing that I want to make sure I've been able to do, get in a position here where I can go home and fish for those species, at least once a year, because that's the big one that I miss about Australia.
Yep. Mate, let's go to the next question there. Let's make this the last one. We've got Tim Morgan there, right on the bottom. I don't actually even know what this question is, but clip on and run Timmy's.
I'm nervous.
G'day, Carl. How you going, brother? My question to you is, what are a couple of your favourite tournament moments from back fishing in Australia? We're all watching your States and kicking all the goals over there. You're still the #1 bass angler in Australia, even though you haven't been here for a decade. So what are a couple of your fond memories from back then? I could probably tell a few stories which we're not allowed to air here now, but let's hear your favourites, mate.
That was good. Yeah, lots of just amazing memories. There's almost too many. You know, the number one fish catch in Australia by far. And, you know, it's so crazy to think, I've told this story too, like one fish can change your life in fishing. And one fish changed my life. You know, my whole life could be so different if it wasn't for this one bite. And it was Sinclair Grand Final, the one that I won. And Greenie was smashing them all that year, and he was leading going into the final day. And we had the final session, I think it was, on the Sunday. Grand Final, Sinclair, I'm in second, Greenie's in first, and he's got a pretty good lead, and I've got to catch a big bag to win. And so I'm on a top water deal, little walk the dog on a spin rod, and I whacked him. I had this good bay that had caught him in there for years, and I had like two like good kilo fish, but I'm like, I knew it wasn't going to win. I had to catch that fish that just put you over the line, the 1.5 pound. This is 10 years in fishing ABT. I've had 2 seconds in grand finals. I've had 3 top 5s, all top 10s, never been able to win. I've got the fish. There's about an hour to go, and it's sun's up, it's day, but I knew the only way to catch a big one was on a top water. And so I'm coming into this bay, I throw the little top water up on the bank, and I'm walking it out, in the back of this 45 plus, like a 1.6 kilo fish comes out of the water and rolls on it. And it was little Sammy's just sitting there. And I'm like, I say to him, we had a marshal then. They just sat in the boat that day. It was like the top 10 went out. And I said, that's the winning fish. And I twitched it, and it rolled on it again, and it missed it. And I'm begging it. I'm please, this is it. And it's working out, and this fish eats it and eats it and eats it all the way back. And halfway back, it's just sitting there, and I'm like almost on my knees, like shaking, and I twitch it. It eats it. I load up on it, and I'm like, yes! And the drag goes, zzz, and it comes off. And I drop to my knees. I drop the rod. I'm like, it's the worst thing ever. I know that was my chance. There's 40 minutes to go, end of the session. So I stand up, and I'm like, I can't give up. I got to keep going. So I fish around the point, and I'm fishing. I'm just constantly thinking about that fish and how aggressive it was. I'd never seen a fish eat a bait that many times all the way out. And I said to my marshal, I was like, my only chance of winning is to catch that fish. I don't know how else. So I left it for like about 30 minutes, and there must have been like 15 minutes to go. And I got the troll motor, I put it on 100. I went all the way back around that point. I came in from the same angle, real slow. Then I got the boat in the same spot, and I threw the top water up there, landed a foot from the bank, and I twitched it, and its back came out of the water again. Just came out of the water and went, and it rolled on it the same way. And I said, that's that fish. And I went twitch, 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 and it ate it. And I hooked up, and I caught that fish, and it just fought like crazy. And I got it in the net. It was a 1.6, and that won me the grand final and got me the trip to America. So like, how sliding doors is that? Imagine if that fish didn't come back, Greenie would have won. Like, just so many things would have changed from that one fish. And that's definitely the most memorable by far. And another quick one is, I'm going to forget the name of the lake. What was the lake where everyone wanted to leave, and me and Timmy fished and won megabucks?
Lost Stock.
And it was super tough, and we were laughing and having a blast, and people wanted to go home because the fishing was so tough, but we'd figured out a little plastic deal, and Tim was giving me crap at the back of the boat, and I said something to him, and I hooked up, and we were going hours without a bite, and I hooked up, and he thought I was like giving him crap, so he came up and like half tackled me because he thought I was like lying. And I said, no, I've actually got one. And he was like, oh crap, and he got the net, and it was like a big fish. They were all giants, and I think we won like every session or something in that, and got big bass in each of them. But people could hear us laughing from like coves over and stuff, and that was sort of a big start of just like making sure you keep the fun in fishing.
I said that was the last question, but I do have one more from Nick Brown down in Victoria. Let's have a listen to that one.
G'day, Carl. Based in Victoria. So I want to do a lot of the ABT comps this year. What would you suggest is the best way to prepare for competitions where you've never fished before? Cheers.
So I suppose we've answered the question about how to pre-fish and all that sort of stuff, but take it right back to the roots. If you're that's only your second ever ABT event, what things do you do before you leave home to get ready for a tournament? Like, it's not just throw your unrigged rods in the back of you. You do a lot of pre-preparation, don't you?
Yeah. You got to be prepared. That's probably one of the biggest things that I did over a lot of other people. You know, it was all about that organisation, that pre-tournament prep, and I'm still like that today. You know, the biggest one, get your leaders tied on, get your rods and reels cleaned up, make sure you've got the right line on, the right leader. Do all those little things that make it easy when you're on the boat to change. Sometimes, and I find myself doing it now, if it's not easy, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, it's too hard to change. So everything for me is like, got to be ready to go, nice and easy, just fishing that bait. It's not working, and it's just like, bang, I can change out and I'm casting again. So if you can have as many rods as you can have in the boat as a co-angler or pro, I want to have all those options ready to go. And when I pick it up in practice, I don't want to be like, that line's not right, or that lure's not right, I should have had that set up. I want it tournament ready when I'm practicing, because if you dialing it in practice and then you change up the night before the tournament, things can be totally different. So I've found that the hard way is by like doing things not quite 100% during practice and then changing it up to 100%, but that's changed things now. It can be a lot of different things about how much line's on your reel, different size lines. You're not sure what weight leader you've got on there, or different hooks. Make sure you're tournament ready before the tournament. So when you're fishing that bait, you're fishing it like you're in the tournament, how you would do it, and that'll make things easier. But prep is everything. Get your hooks right, get your rods and reels, clean them up, get your leaders tied on, and just be, I would say, 100% ready before you hit the water.
That's awesome, mate, and thank you very much to all of the anglers that sent in those video questions to Carl, because they haven't got media training like you and I, mate. Sometimes it's intimidating to get in front of the camera, mate. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us on ABT Lockdown Live. We know you've been seeing snippets of the show over there. I bet you're going to watch this one all the way through though, because you're in it. Thanks again. Survive COVID-19, mate, because we're waiting just like everyone else to get tournaments going over there and over here. And we are just all itching to get back on the water, mate. And just a final tip for all people watching now, at the end of this show, after the credits, hang around for Carl's M15 plus rated story.
No, thanks for having me on, mate. It's awesome. I appreciate all the Aussie support. It's what has driven me right through some of the toughest times by far. I have such a passion for Australia and Australian fishing and all the anglers over there. I went through it all. I can't wait to come back and do it. I love, just being home in Australia, seeing the bass catches and the barra and cod and what you guys are doing over there. It's been my passion forever, and just to see the support that I have definitely means a lot to me. So hopefully we can keep it going. Hopefully I can be the first Aussie to make the Classic. We've got lots of accomplishments ahead of us, but that blue trophy is for you guys back home, no doubt.
Awesome, mate.
See you guys.
Well, there you go. I know it's past a lot of people's bedtime, but we had so much good content from Carl. We had to run it all in this show. And thanks very much to all of our contributors to Lockdown Live tonight. I've read out the three winners. Vince has got back to us already, but Graham and Stephanie Walker for the Rapala prize pack, and Scotty Pierce for the Nicole Suck-Up. We need your addresses, and Scott, I need your shirt size so we can get you your prize packs. Message that to the Australian Bass Tournaments Facebook page. That's nearly it for us tonight. Remember that during the week we're going to be giving away the fully autographed AFC Series 4 jersey from Team Hummingbird, the winning team, the one that Carl Jocenson won his 4 bass events in the row on. Keep an eye out for the promotion where we're going to give that away. Remember, all of those AFC episodes, they are all going to be up now on the YouTube channel. Nicole's going to make those things all live now. And any feedback you've got, shoot us to our ABT page. I noticed some good production feedback in there that we may use next week. All of your feedback helps make this a better show. I'm not going to say anything about the last segment. All I know is if Carl tries to prank you, this is a great way to get back at him.
Tell us the story of your favourite meal you ever had on a farm.
So Steve has told me, and I've told this to close people that I know, and it always gets a laugh. It's kind of famous over here in the US because plenty of people have heard it. But my uncle John Kidd, if you've followed closely, I went out there and I worked on his property. It's $8,000 acre property, Western Australia, middle of nowhere, crop, cattle, dry country, hard country. And I worked out there for a year, and it was the greatest learning experience of my life. But what I didn't know, and all I did know, is John and his kids and everyone, and I was the younger one, so I didn't see it growing up. I'd helped out there. They were pranksters. They pranked everyone. The kids pranked them. There's crazy stories of kids parking the truck, pretending that it was an accident, running home, and the parents would freak out because this car would be in the ditch, all this stuff. And so I started learning that pretty quick when I started working there full time. And I didn't trust John for anything. If he told me, like, go through a gate, I'd think it was a trap. Like, that's how it got. So we're always on alert. Well, John had never been got. My uncle is the guy that is impossible to get. He's had his kids and his nephews and nieces got him for so many years that he was impossible. You'd try and he'd know. He'd figure it out. You could never do it. So one night, me and my really good mate, Chris Jow, were out there, and we'd have to hunt pigs at night, keep them off the crop. We shot this huge pig. And so this massive pig was there. We got it. And I said to Chris, stupid idea. It was like 1 a.m. I said, imagine if we could set this up and get my uncle to shoot the pig, even though it was already dead. And he's like, that's stupid. Well, anyway, long story short, we did it. We propped it up under this tree. My cousin, my mate Chris, didn't know my Uncle John very well. So he didn't want to be a part of it. But I'm like, we're doing it. Long story short, he ended up getting in the truck with Chris the next morning. I was in a tractor. Chris was driving down past where this pig was, and Chris hit the brakes to a skidding stop and said, man, that looks like a pig. And John said, it does too. He pulled the gun off the back rack, lined it up, this big old feral pig sitting, and he shot it. And it just, obviously it sat there. And so we just lit him up. And so when he came down to see me, I was telling him, like, when them big boars, like, charge you like that, how do you stay calm in those situations? And we're calling him, like, sniper kid and crack shot kid, and we're giving it to him. And, like, all day, he just kept saying, like, oh, how long would that be? And we'd like, oh, it's about a pig snout. We just kept on him. And so he was laughing, but then he stopped laughing. He stopped laughing at us giving him hell. And so anyway, lunchtime comes that day, and we're going to go back to Toowoomba for like 3 or 4 days. So we go up to have dinner, to have lunch, and my auntie Jill, John's wife, she sort of would sit the stuff out on the table, and then you would sort of get like a lettuce, tomato and stuff for lunch. And so we're sitting down, and John and Jill had the meat already on their plate, which was a bit weird. Like, cause I'm like scared. I know now John's we're probably dead. Like, I'm figuring he's probably gonna kill us somehow. That was like the worst case scenario, but probably the main one. And I'm looking, their meat's on their plate, and then there's meat on the table, and it looks a bit different. It looks like corned meat, but it had like big fat lines through it and dark meat. And so we grab it, and Chris puts it on his plate, and I put it on mine, and we're just starving. You're working on the farm. We start eating, and I like even smelt it when I cut it. I smelt it. No, it smells all right, so I start eating it. Chris is eating it. We're into it. We're sort of talking, and I look across, and my Uncle John's there, and he's eating his dinner, and he's leaning over like this, and there's tears falling from his face. He's crying into his food. And I look, and we all start laughing, and I'm like, I said, yeah, we got you bad, hey, like we got you with shooting. That's what I figured he's laughing at. And he says, yeah, boys, you got me. Anyway, we eat, and he's like, oh, there's a bit left there. You better finish it off. And Chris is like, I'll have it. So he finishes it off. And we're packing up, and he says something, or Jill said something, and he said, you're not gonna tell him, are you? And John said, no, I won't tell him. And I said, what? And he was like, no, you'll be right. And I said, see, Chris, he's going to try and get us with something. I said, you better be wary. I said, because I said, he's going to get us back bad. And so we get in the truck, and we're going down to do one more job, and then we get to go home. We're driving down. I still remember we're driving down the shed, and I said, you're never going to get us. Like, I know that you're going to try and do something, so whatever you try and do, I'm going to be on top of it. And he said, what if I already got you? And I said, and Chris said, you couldn't have. And he said, you know what you had for lunch? And Chris said, corned meat. And he said, oh, not quite. Well, that old school cooking and living out there, Jill was doing something, and they used all parts of the beast or whatever, and apparently she had a bull's penis and was using something from that, and John seen it, and he said, cook that, corn it, cook it, and feed it to the boys. And Jill said, no, I'm not doing that, there's no way. And he said, I won't sleep for the next 3 days. And Jill was like, yeah, okay. So she cooked this thing, corned it, and butterflied it, and like laid it on the plate, and me and Chris ate it. So our getting John lasted about 2 hours, and then he got us back in the worst way possible. So we haven't lived that one down, and he brings it up on the regular.
Awesome, mate. And just quietly, what does bull penis taste like?
It's pretty good. It was fine. It's a delicacy apparently, but Chris was spewing out of the car. When John told him, he was literally spewing out of the car. I said, you're a sick old man. And he said, no, but Chris is sick. Look at him. Spewing. So yeah, we never took on John ever again. Don't take on Uncle John in anything, because you won't get him.
There you go, guys. That's it from us tonight. We are done. Moral of the story, if you want to win a Bassmaster Elite Series trophy, eat some bull penis. We'll see you next week for episode 5.